Hi, I'm Kerri Kannan, author of Uncovering the Divine Within, founder of the World Awaken Project, and to some, the world's leading self-love mentor. Today I'm going to talk about self-love and its importance in our lives. To me, I found that self-love is the number one most important thing that we can achieve in a lifetime in order to have a life that is truly fulfilling for us. Every challenge that we have, every doubt that we have is always a result of a lack of self-love. And I'm going to go into that a little bit here. How does our inability to love ourselves impair our lives? Well, it impairs our ability to embrace our bodies, our body image. And when we have a deflated body image, we tend to not feel so confident in ourselves because we're so absorbed in how we look and our general appearance. So we're not willing to necessarily take those risks because we're afraid of how we'll look. It also affects our self-confidence. And even if there are no body image issues involved, if you've been conditioned to doubt yourself and to not trust yourself and your judgments, that is an inability to love yourself, to trust, to believe that I am the creator of my experience and I know what's right for me. And unfortunately, we live in a world where we're told who we should be and what we should do, and we buy into that at a very young age, and it becomes really ingrained in our subconscious mind. So we almost don't have a choice as to whether we believe in ourselves or not. But fortunately, there are some tools and some teachings that people of modern day have come up with to help release a lot of that. And later on in this video series, I will help you to identify and unlock some of those things that are standing in your way of a life of complete and utter fulfillment. Another thing that an ability to love yourself impacts is your feeling of worthiness and deserving. Now, if you feel like you are unworthy of love, say that it's because you feel like you're unintelligent or because of a body image issue, or maybe someone told you when you were young that you were unworthy of love or that you were a bad boy or a bad girl, that stays with us. And the conditioning that we bring with us into adulthood doesn't really stop unless we take a conscious step towards identifying and accepting that that's how we feel about ourselves and actually allowing ourselves to release that. Now, a lot of people will tell you that you need to release things by just, pushing it away and letting it go. But really, denial does not get us anywhere. What I've found is that if I can actually embrace the aspects of myself that I perceive to be less than perfect, then there's a freedom to be exactly as I am and exactly who I am. And from that self-acceptance in all of my many human foibles, that allows me to then be free to make a different decision, to make a different choice. And it also allows me to claim it. It empowers me to say, yes, this is who I am, this is what I've done, and I'm not ashamed of it. Because as we're trying to release things out of our lives, and as we're sort of condemning ourselves, we're actually disempowering ourselves. And through my work, I actually help people to take their power back by embracing every single aspect of who you are, so that you can then make a conscious decision to change if that's indeed what you choose to do. Another aspect of one's ability or inability to love oneself is that oftentimes we'll question our decisions. If you are confronted with a decision and intuitively you feel one way, but then somebody else tells you, oh, well, you should do it this way because this is the way it's always done. But if inside you really feel like you should do it one way and you're questioning your decisions and you don't trust yourself, then chances are you'll make more mistakes because you have an internal guidance system that will allow you to know what is the correct step to take. But if you're constantly questioning your decisions because of your conditioning, then you end up really struggling a lot more than you need to. Seeking validation and searching for validation from others is another indication that you probably have some self-love issues, that you don't trust yourself quite fully and completely. And validation can come in many forms. Of course, it could come in, how do I look? Does my butt look fat in these jeans? Or it can come in the form of, is this the right decision to make? Mind you, we all like to be validated, myself included. It's great to hear words of validation. But when we rely on it as our indicator of whether we are good or worthy, then we run into some trouble. So through this course, I'm going to address some of the issues that we all pretty much have going on. Also, an inability to love yourself really tremendously impacts your ability to succeed in life. Because if you can't love yourself and trust yourself, nobody else is going to do that stuff for you. Nobody else is going to push you to succeed. Nobody else is going to tell you how great you are and that you can do it all. Or they might tell you, but they can't do it for you. And your ability to trust yourself and believe in yourself and love yourself and know that your way is the right way for you and what you feel is right for you is tremendously important, because everybody has their own gift and nobody can recognize that gift for you. You really need to recognize it for yourself. And if you're bombarded, or if you're carrying around years and years of self-condemnation and self-doubt, it's really, really difficult to make that transition to being in a place of complete acceptance that you can do anything that you want. Anything that you want is possible for you. But it's really hard with our conditioning sometimes to be able to access that part of ourselves, because we have years and years of negative and limiting thoughts that we carry around with us, whether we realize it or not. So in this course, I'm going to help you to identify and release a lot of that stuff so that you can lead a more fulfilling, happy life. Now, a lot of what we experience in our lives is conditional. Oh, when I lose 40 pounds, then I'll allow myself to have a lover. Or, oh, when I achieve this, then I'll allow myself to do that. Or, well, when you decide to, do what you're supposed to do, then I'll let you do this. All of that is conditions. It's all conditions that we place upon our loved ones. It's conditions that we place upon ourselves. Because really, you can't accept someone else as they are unless you can accept yourself as you are. For example, if you have issues in your life around a certain trait or aspect of who you are, you'll notice that in everybody, yet you may deny it in yourself. And we don't notice things in other people unless we have an investment in that thing. Now, it can be that you're either afraid that you will develop that trait more, or it can be that you have that trait and you are trying to disown it. And oftentimes what we'll do is we'll have a trait and we will project our ideas of who we are onto other people. So I could give you a direct, clear statement and it can be reflected as an attack. Or you can do the same thing. You can say something to somebody in complete innocence, and because of their conditioning, they'll interpret whatever you say as an attack. So what we really need to do is address our attack thoughts within ourselves, because really you can't change somebody else. You can only do the work for yourself, and then in doing the work for yourself, it inspires other people to say, hey, look at what that person has done for themselves, and I want a piece of that. And then they will then be more willing to look at themselves and what their personal mental afflictions may be, or emotional afflictions, because really that's what it comes down to. Our thoughts create our beliefs, and then that creates the way we perceive the world. And none of what we see is through a very clear lens. It's all sort of distorted based on our past programming, our conditioning, our hopes, our dreams, the things that we think we can and cannot do, and all the whole conglomeration of our life experience. So really the only person that you can control or that you can change is yourself. Some of the major aspects or some of the major limitations to our ability to love ourselves, especially for women, is our ability to accept our bodies exactly as they are. Now, regardless of whether you're thin or fat, it doesn't really matter. Your ability to accept yourself or not can either enhance or impede your ability to have the life that you absolutely desire. We are so bombarded with images of beauty, and oftentimes they're really not realistic, and we're trying so hard to live up to this perfect ideal with our imperfect perceptions. And what we don't normally realize is that half the images that we see in magazines are airbrushed and they're photoshopped. So an image in a magazine might take 20 pounds off of some girl, and she might be beautiful, but she might have flaws, and we don't get to see those flaws because the media will cover every imperfection up, and it creates a truly distorted image of what beauty is. And oftentimes we say, okay, well, when I'm in this place, then I'll allow this to happen. When I'm here, then I'll allow that to happen. But that's really placing conditions on ourselves too. When we say, if this, then that, that's always telling us that we're not okay exactly as we are, and we're not accepting ourselves exactly as we are. And we're completely robbing ourselves of a life of fulfillment, and we're not allowing ourselves to live life. Life is in the present moment. It's now. It's not sometime in the future. So if you can't embrace yourself in the present moment and in the now, then the future will never come, and you'll end up living your life without ever having lived. You're always looking forward to the future. So when this happens. So what I'm going to do in my work, or what I do in my work, is I help people to release all of that baggage, all of that stuff, to live a much more present life and to be able to really embrace and accept yourself. And then what you find is that you love yourself and you love your life exactly as it is, and really great things start to show up. And the more attractive and loving you feel towards yourself, the more attractive you become to the things that you would love. Another thing, going to the body image thing, is that when we're so concerned about how we look in front of other people, especially like if you have a lover or a spouse or a partner, our inability to embrace ourselves exactly as we are truly affects our ability to be present with our lover and to have a fulfilling love life or fulfilling relationships at all. Because if you're worried about your thighs, or if you're worried about even your performance, should I do that? Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I touch this? Should I be this way? Then it really detracts from the moment, and it really detracts from your ability to enjoy the experience, not only in an intimate relationship, but in all of life. Because as you release your limiting conditioning, you allow yourself to expand and open up to every single moment, to the moment as it is, instead of the moment as you think it should be. And then you create much more enjoyment and freedom in your life. And that's where true happiness comes from, is being able to enjoy the moment as it is happening, not enjoy something in some far off future that may never come. Because other people saw me as fat. So when I was about 6 years old, I went on a shopping trip with my grandmother, and she asked me in the car what I was going to be when I grew up, and I said, I'm going to be a singer. And she said, really? Well, if you're going to be a singer, you better be skinny, because singers are skinny. And I thought about all the singers I could think of, and I could think of, dating myself, Tennille of Captain and Tennille. She was skinny. I could think of Cher, who I saw at night on TV. She was skinny. I could think of Marie Osmond, and I perceived that she was skinny. And even the women on the Magic Garden show that I watched every day after school, they were skinny too. So I concluded that my grandmother was correct. If I wanted to be a singer, I had to be skinny. I didn't know of any of the more robust women who are singers. I didn't know of Ella Fitzgerald, or I didn't know of Aretha Franklin, and I didn't know of any of those real divas who, you know, just work it and sing and have lifelong careers, have huge careers. I didn't know about those people. I just knew of my point of reference, and I believed my grandmother to be correct. And then I was in ballet when I was 8 years old, and I've always been very flexible. And I could not, we were doing splits, but we were doing Russian splits, and I could not get all the way down to the floor on my Russian split. I was like this far off the floor. And my ballet teacher came up to me and she called me a fat tub of lard. Now, I was hurt and humiliated, and I went home and I told my mom, and she pulled me out of ballet. Now, these experiences happened to show me what I had been thinking about myself. Before my grandmother told me that I could not be a singer if I wasn't skinny, I already had the thought that if I wasn't skinny, I couldn't be a singer. And before the ballet teacher called me a fat tub of lard, I had an investment in that thought, and I perceived myself to be a fat tub of lard. At the young age of 6 years old and 8 years old, when those experiences happened, I already had formed an opinion about myself and was already self-condemning. And those experiences later showed up in my adulthood, and it impacted my ability to relate to other people and relate to myself. I always carried it with me, so it was always reflected back to me until I chose to change. It affected my confidence, it affected my feelings of worthiness, it affected my ability to succeed, it affected my ability and my availability to be open to love. So really, my particular condemnation, my feelings of a lack of self-love, really affected every area of my life. And later on, when we do the exercises, you will too find how your personal dysfunction, or whatever you would like to call it, affects every area of your life. So it's really, really important to get down to knowing what is it that I perceive to be wrong with me, and how can I, heal that inner woundedness. So I had been carrying all of those things with me into adulthood. And then when I got married, my ex-husband, my now ex-husband, had suggested that I quit my job and do what I really wanted to do with the rest of my life. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. If I have that opportunity, I'm going to find my life purpose. So what I did was I set out on a quest to find my life purpose. And at the time, I had been studying all sorts of spiritual things, and I came across an article that told me that my life purpose, or my special function as the article called it, was the exact polar opposite of whatever I perceived to be the reality of my own guilt, sin, or victimization. In other words, what was missing was my gift, my weakness was my strength, and my special dysfunction was my special function. And when I heard that, I thought to myself, okay, well, what's my special dysfunction? I'm fat. And I thought, no, that's not it. I don't like myself. And I thought, no, that's not really it either. I don't love myself. And when I had that thought, I started jumping up and down around the living room, thanking everybody who had ever hurt me. And I realized that my special function, or my life purpose, was to learn to love myself and teach other people how to love themselves. So now what I do is I teach people how to love themselves. I'm considered by some as the world's leading self-love mentor. Not because I teach you how to get skinnier, or I teach you how to attract a mate, or I teach you how to make money. What I teach you to do is to accept yourself, and so that you can release those limiting thoughts, so that you're then free to lose weight, so that you're then free to be open to loving relationships. And then you're free to be successful, or you're free to have the life that you truly desire. And it's in embracing those aspects of ourselves that we have rejected that we can really come to a place of personal peace, where we can then take the next step. Because as long as we have resistance in the way, as long as we're saying, you know, I need to be skinny and I'm fat and, you know, I need to lose weight, that it holds it in place. But if we can allow it to just sort of release and say, you know what, I am as I am the person I am. Yes, sometimes I become angry, sometimes I'm not the nicest person in the world, you know, whatever the affliction is, the mental or emotional affliction is, if we can just embrace it, then it removes the resistance and we can actually claim our power in that. Because as long as we're condemning ourselves, we're really disempowering ourselves. So some of the results of learning to love yourself and embracing the dark and the light are: you create more depth in your life. There's more meaning in your life. The things that happen to you and the experiences that you experience have much more meaning and depth. You become more gentle with yourself. And in becoming more gentle with yourself, you become more gentle with those around you. Because everything that we experience, all of our feelings about ourselves, are reflected in our relationships, in our lives, in our relationships with other people, in our relationships with our ability to succeed, in our relationships to our work, and so forth. So as you become deeper and you get to know yourself better and you start to embrace and accept yourself more, your relationships become deeper. As you become gentler with yourself and more accepting of who you are and less hard on yourself, you become gentler with those around you. As you embrace your need to be validated and your yearnings, you become more tolerant of other people and their yearnings and their need to be validated. As you embrace your own worthiness and start to see your own deserving, you start to see other people as deserving too, and you're much more supportive of them, and it really greatly impacts their lives. I mean, you know, many of us have one person in our lives who really encouraged us to be who we really are. And then from that one person, just that one person, that's our touchstone. That's the thing that we go back to. And if you can embrace yourself exactly as you are and allow yourself to be unconditionally accepting and unconditionally loving of who you are, then that translates to unconditional love to everybody else. And you can then become a giver and a receiver of unconditional love in your life. And really, ultimately, that's what self-love is all about. At even the highest levels, is being able to love unconditionally. And the greatest thing is that you actually take responsibility for your life and you no longer become a victim. You start to decide, okay, this is what I'm going to do and this is what's going to happen. And I trust myself enough to know that this is going to happen because I've decided that is my intention. And then you have much more faith in your intentions and you have much more faith in your internal guidance system and what's going on inside. And the world will perfectly reflect everything that is going on within you. So I thank you for joining me on this video, and I really look forward to working with you in the other videos in this series, because they're really an awesome way of being able to identify, accept, and release our limiting conditioning. And really from all of that comes a feeling of forgiveness for everybody who has ever hurt you, because then you can see that really what they were doing is they were showing you your own thoughts and feelings about yourself. And without the context to understand the context of your thinking, you never would have seen that. So ultimately, forgiveness does come into the equation. So I want to thank you again for joining me. And I I would like to invite you to place your name in the contact form below, and in a few days you will receive the second part of this video series. Thank you and have a wonderful day.